What's up, guys? It is Tuesday, January 21st, and we are right back at the work, training ourselves mentally and physically. So let's discuss a hand history that occurred on Friday that we saved. Let's set up the hand first. I am in the hijack with around $600, and the villain is in the big blind with roughly about the same, $600. So it comes to me, everybody folds to me, and I look down in the hijack and I have pocket queens, queen of spade and queen of hearts. I raise to 25, folds around to the big blind, and he calls. And the flop comes 8 of diamond, 5 of diamond, and 2 of spade. So he checks, and I do a standard continuation bet of $35. If it was a more of a unknown, then I would probably bet size my bet to be more exploitative by making it to 40 or 45. But because this is a regular at WinStar, I had to be more balanced and be more deceptive, so I just kept the standard C bet so that it doesn't give away any tails. So he calls, and the turn comes the Jack of Hearts, and he checks, and of course we do another standard continuation bet of around $75. So and then he calls, right? Nothing unusual so far. So the turn comes the 8 of hearts, and he checks. Decision time, right? Do we check here or do we bet here? Well, let's range him first. What are his ranges of hands that's calling us on the flop and calling us on the turn? Well, the top of his range is probably a flush draw with a jack, maybe like king, queen, jack of diamonds, or 10 jack of diamonds. The middle of his range might include maybe a pocket nines, pocket tens, ace 8, and the bottom of his range might include ace 5, 5 6, 4 6, where he's trying to see if he could pick up a gut shot or a draw along with his pair on the turn. But when he calls it on the turn, the bottom of his range, we could drop that off. So the middle of his range is still, we could still say there, 9s, 10s, ace 8 that didn't believe us, put us on a draw. And of course the top of his range is still gonna, the top of his calling range is still kind of going to call, like any jack or something. So now the hands that so if you look at the range war, the range of hands that we beat versus the range of hands that we lose to is right there around 50-50 or 55-45. So you can say this is a marginal spot. You could check or you could bet. And so I opted to go for value. And then after deciding to go for value, we had to go bet sizing. I sized my bet to 155 because I wanted, if he put me on a flush draw, then I wanted him to continue with that thought. And by polarizing my bet size to a larger bet, it looked like I pretty much have a bluff or a really strong hand, right? Or air or the nuts, you could say. But he doesn't know that I'm merging my range to a medium strength hand like queens on this kind of board, because not much will call me that I beat. So I would, and then of course I bet to 155, and he snap calls and turns over ace 8 6 offsuit. I think it was 8 of heart and 6 of diamonds. So of course we lose that hand, but I think it was still a bet. Like, it's very marginal. Some people don't, but when I did bet, he called. He turned over and he kind of said, I should have check raised. And of course, I just said maybe, because if I don't have anything of value to say, I try not to say anything at all. But if he check raised there, nothing is calling him that he beats, and then any hands that beat him is calling him, right? And any hands that he beats is folding. So there's no point in check raising there for him. If it does, it's just a silly bet. But that is the hand history of the day, and we didn't do so well. We did win 1,300 on Saturday and lost a little bit on Sunday with a few coolers. So we are 2 and I think 11 for the session, and we are down around $3,600 heading into week 3 now. So unfortunately, our win rate has been decimated, and it's gonna be a while to get it back to anything reasonable. And of course, because we play on the weekdays during daytime, we're gonna be playing the toughest time. So it's what we signed up for. Let's go. Hey guys, so we are back in our isolation chamber for some contemplation and reflection time. So let's reflect on what we discussed yesterday. Most importantly, let's narrow down on patterns, right? Throughout our daily lives, we live and execute and do things rarely out of intention and with mindfulness. Most of the time, we do things out of patterns because it makes us feel comfortable, and it's what we're used to. But most of the time, we don't even recognize that pattern, let alone be aware of what we are really doing. So let's take, for example, to the poker table, right? We see people play according to patterns all the time. For example, a player might have this pattern where if they raise pre-flop, and if there's a ace high flop and they don't have the ace, they almost always check. So if we recognize this pattern in this player, then of course we can exploit him, right? Anytime he checks on an ace high board, we know he doesn't have it, then we could bet with 100% of our ranges, value and bluff, and be able to then know that we could take it down almost all the time because we know this player's pattern already. So if you cannot recognize your pattern at the poker table before someone else does, then you're going to be exploited. And until you get to the point where you can actually see these patterns, your game will never improve, because you always think that it's a bad beat or it's just running bad, when really you're being exploited and you don't know it. So if you could use this opportunity at the poker table to slow your mind down and to start observing yourself, and then you start to pick up your patterns. And because if you continuously do this, then your pattern recognition increases, your awareness and your perception develops, because you start to see things that you never saw before. You start to see the correlation between action A, action B, and action C. And when you develop these things, though, then you start to see how these patterns have formed into habits, right? Throughout your life, throughout our days, we keep doing things that we don't want to do, but it's almost automatic. For example, if somebody criticizes us or somebody say negative towards us, our pattern is to get angry, to say certain things, and to shut down, I guess, certain people. So these are all different patterns of emotions and behaviors that we display throughout our days, but we don't recognize it. And because of that, we do a lot of harmful things to ourselves and to others. So if we want to correct ourselves, then we need to stay determined every day to watch ourselves and watch every little action and every movement and every thought so that we can start to pick up patterns. And then if we see patterns that are not good for us, then we can start making adjustments, stopping the pattern. And then we could inject new actions and new thoughts and new line of thinking so that now we have move our pattern to a different way and in a more positive manner. And then once we have this pattern developed, then we can start trying to iterate this pattern more. And the more we iterate these patterns, the more ingrained they become in us, and eventually they become habits. And if we could do this slowly every day throughout our lives, throughout our days, then every day will become a fruitful day where we achieve something, not in terms of material or achievement, but in terms of personal development and personal cultivation. And that's what we really want, because at the end of the day, we're all just trying to improve ourselves and improve our lives. So look inside and look on how to improve on the inside and not so much on the outside. That's it for today. Let's hit the tables and let's smash it today. Peace out.